Howdy folks, today we're going to look a little bit at handlebars. What is handlebars? Handlebars is a backend templating language that lets us generate HTML kind of on the fly within our Express server. At least we're going to be using it within Express. It's not super popular these days to do this sort of thing, but it's still, the fact that we're going over a template gives you a good introduction for React because React uses a similar syntax. So let's take a look. We've got our server set up. Okay, I've installed Express, I've got a basic app, and I've got app.listen, listening on port 3001. Nothing in here yet so far. Okay, so now let's take a look at how we would import handlebars into this. So let's bring up a terminal. Handlebars itself has a couple packages. The one we're going to use is called Express-Handlebars. Express-Handlebars. So let that install. You can see it was added there. Handlebars, Express-Handlebars. Now, similar to how we've got our app when we're creating a new Express, we have to do something similar with handlebars. And so what we're going to do is right after we create our app, we're going to say, okay, handlebar, or, HBS is the example that they gave us before. Handlebars. So instead of calling it like this, we're not going to do that. They have a create method. All right. So now we've got our new handlebars engine, as it were. How do we add that into the app? Well, this is not a middleware. Express has the use function for middleware. This, in fact, is going to be an engine, a rendering engine. So the first thing we do is we define it. So app.engine, handlebars engine, and then we're going to say hbs.engine. Handlebars engine is just a text string that we're giving to identify this engine, this rendering engine with Express. Why doesn't Express just automatically know it's handlebars? Well, Express is very generic. It doesn't know it's handlebars because you might be using a different engine. You might be using something that's not handlebars. There's a bunch of templating engines out there. So Express just says, here's how you define and tell Express what an engine is. And this engine has to have certain properties that it conforms to. All right, so now that we've defined our engine, is that enough? No, still not enough because we have to tell Express to use it. So to do that, we're actually going to set an Express setting, which we've never really done before because we don't really have a reason to do it most of the time. But to do that, we're going to call set. The first parameter, as you can see, is the setting. So the setting is going to be view engine. What is that? That's the engine Express uses to generate the HTML. And the second parameter, so you can see setting valuable, is actually going to be handlebars engine. This string must match this string for it to work properly. Okay, now what? Is that it? Technically, yes, that's it, except nothing's going to happen right now. So if I run my server here, and let's get a thing over here. It says cannot get. Why can't it get? Well, because we haven't, the Express isn't listening on that route. We've set up a handlebars engine, but that's it. We're not doing anything else. So let's actually set up some routes, okay? So in the true MVC fashion, we're going to set up controllers as a folder. Oops. We're going to set up models, which is going to be empty because we're not using a database for this, and views. We're going to be focusing mostly on views and controllers here. So in our set our controllers, we're going to create a router from Express. And let's call this page router, new router. Okay. Similar to how we've done this before, we're splitting up the routes. There's a reason for that. Let's see, and let's go in here and let's import that. Whoops. Routes equals require controllers. And remember, we don't need to put the index.js because Node does it automatically. I'm going to say app.use routes. I'm just going to tell it use these routes for all the slash. Okay, so let's make a route.get slash. Okay, so now that we're in here, how do we actually tell handlebars to do something now that we're getting our slash? Because what I could do is I could just say request.end, and if I run this, it's just going to give me blank. I want handlebars to actually do something at this point. So how do I do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is we actually need to set something up for handlebars to render. So let's go into our views and let's say main.handlebars. Okay, and you can see VS Code automatically just turns this into that little mustache because it knows what a handlebars file looks like. Handlebars file, let's just do some HTML. Just put a standard, well, I'm not doing that yet. This is the main page. It's, oops, HTML. Because it is. Okay, so now let's go back to here. Now instead of .end, we're going to say res.render. Render is a special function on Express, and Express knows that when it gets called with render, it needs to go look at its view engine, and it needs to tell its view engine to go render a template. The name of the template goes in here, main. So you notice I created a file called main.handlebars, and I created a render called main. And that, how do those connect together? Well, let's see if it works, first of all. Oh, failed to look up view main in views directory. Well, it doesn't like that very much, does it? So what went wrong here? Okay, after some searching, I have figured out the answer. Turns out that whatever you put as the engine here, I thought you could just put whatever, but apparently this is actually what it looks for the file extension. So if we get rid of this engine here, well, just get that error back. Yeah, so failed to look at view main. If I get rid of the engine here, like that, now it gives me a different error, but this is an expected error. So that's good to know. It just, we want to keep this as handlebars so that it can use handlebars as the extension. Today I learned. So what's it telling us now? No such file or directory open. Handlebars test views layouts main.handlebars. Well, this is a little confusing because we told it to be main here. Let me actually, I'm just going to change this to home because I don't want to confuse here. Home. There we go. Now it's still asking for main, but notice it's looking for layouts main. The reason for that is Handlebars does expect there to be a layouts folder in here. And that's the default layout it's going to use for displaying your page. So you notice this is a fragment. This is not a full page. The layout is supposed to be the full page. So if I go in here, this is where I would put my whole page. But then how does Handlebars know to put the fragment in here? Well, there's a special little thing you have to put in here. This special little chunk here tells Handlebars that, hey, the main body of what you're trying to render this layout, and then put the body, the stuff in here. So if I say before body, after body, and let's run this again, you see before body shows up, after body shows up, and then in between them is that stuff that I had on home, right? So if I was to wrap this in a, let's say, a paragraph tag, and rerun that, you can see everything in that paragraph tag, because it doesn't like having a div inside of it, is the body, and then before and after is in the layout. So this can be helpful if you want to define CSS or define JavaScript or stuff like that. So there's our layout. Notice that when I make these changes, I don't have to restart my server because these are template files. They're not actually server code. So I'm just rerunning them. So here's our main page. It's raw HTML. You can put whatever you want here. You can put styles. You can put JavaScript. Anything. It is a page. Not the most useful thing though, right? Because this is static HTML. So let's do something a little more useful with it. Let's say we have some parameters we want to pass in to our page. Okay, so what we do is in render, I give it some options. I can say, okay, name 42. Some nice parameters in here. Maybe these come from a database. Maybe you've got some authentication set up already that you know who your user is and you're giving some data. Anyway, this object, every single key here is available on the template. So let's see, I have my name key here, right? And if I go into this page here, then what I'm going to need to do is I want to have curly braces. And I think it's 1. Let's try 1 for now. Let's just see what happens here. Oh, no, it is not 1. It's 2. All right. So 2. And I have actually changed my server, so I got to restart that. But you can see now where I put name. So name is like this. You can see it replaces it with whatever that value is. That value that was defined here. So if I want to do the same thing with the age, your age is 42. I can even do some cool stuff in here with JavaScript because this template goes anywhere. So if I run this, you can see that prints out now. And if I take a look at the JavaScript in here, you can see that if 42 is greater than 30, it's replaced the age in here. You probably are not going to do that super often, but it is kind of useful to have. All right. So that is one of the great things about these templates. You can have like your home page, maybe you've got a home page and you got to do some stuff. And then let's say we want to go somewhere else. We want to go to profile page maybe. We load that. It says can't get profile. I'm going to get rid of the script tag. All right, because we haven't put something in here. So let's do another. For this, we say profile. We're going to render the profile. And notice I'm just changing the layout. Restart that because I did put some new stuff in there. It says can't look up profile. Well, that's because it doesn't exist. Your profile, let's do whole thing. Back to main. For name. Okay, profile for Bob. Back to main. Go to profile. So you notice this is reloading the page every time. This is not a single page app. So what we've been building before in JavaScript is single page apps, whereas handlebars are not single page apps. They are multi-page apps. So every time I click anything, it goes to another page. Okay, so let's take a look at the profile here now. Let's talk about how we handle arrays and objects. So what I want to do is I want to put an object in here. I want to say, okay, let's get some information about like Bob's address. Okay, street. City. I don't want this box, thank you. I still don't want the box. So now we've got a complex object in here. How are we going to handle that? Well, we can handle it pretty normally. Your address is, okay. And I'm going to say address, because it's an object, I can say address.street, city, address.state, .zip. Let's restart this. And there it is. Each of these little pieces on that object. So you can see with just the dot, you can grab that data out there. Okay, so now let's say that Bob has some connections. Let's say this is has some professional connections. They're professional connections. Well, there's nothing there right now. Let's add some stuff. So connections. Let's put an array in here. An array of people he's connected to. Okay. Go away. VS Code, just trying to be helpful. So we've got multiple connections, right? What I could do in my profile is I could say something like connections 0.name. Let's see if it likes that. No, it doesn't like that. It's like, hey, this is not cool with me. So how do we do a loop? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do an each. Each, okay. And then connections as connection. And then we end our each. So what does each do? Each says, okay, let's just loop over every single element here. It's just basically a for of loop. Why these brackets? That's just how handlebars is. That's the handlebars syntax. But connection now becomes an object that we have access to. So I can say connection.name. And there's my connection. Note again, I haven't had to restart the server for this stuff. Okay. So let's go back to Bob's address, right? If he's in San Jose, we want to have some cool stuff show up because San Jose is like the best city. So how do we do that? We want to be like, you live in the best city. Okay. Right now he lives in the best city. But let's go ahead and change his city to San Francisco, which, while a cool city, is not the best city. All right. So if I run that, you can see it still says I live in the best city, but I don't want that to show up. I only want that to show up. I'm just going to put it here, San Jose. Well, that's wrong. So let's do a conditional. If address.city city. Now you notice this kind of syntax here, the slash indicates that there's the end, whereas before we would be using curly braces, right? Let's see if this works. Oh, it doesn't like that. I think it's maybe a single equals. No, it's not. Expecting close of raw block. Let's take a look at this. So it turns out we actually can't do this. We can't do a conditional like this because if blocks only check if something is truthy. Okay. So let's fix something like that. Let's just pull this address out here. Which means we need to pre-compute this. We need to actually put something here that just says, okay, we need to put it down here. Is San Jose? Because then what we can do is we can come up here and we can just say if is San Jose. So this is where Handlebar starts to show some limitations, right? You can't put anything in these conditionals. They're very limited in what they're expecting. All right, let's try that then. All right, it does not show up. But if we go in here and we change this to San Jose, there it is. So handlebars conditionals. You could also do an else. And I think that is this. Notice I'm using the template literal in there. Oops, else doesn't match if. It doesn't like that either, does it? I think I'm not supposed to have that in there. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so I live in the best city. Let's change that. You live in a good city. So that's how you would handle an else if. You could also do an actual else, then some conditional here, or you can just leave it blank. Indent that a little bit. So these are kind of the basics of handlebars. It's very, you can put JavaScript on here. You notice we haven't done that here, but you can definitely do that if you want to. It's very much tied to these. So you get something, you get data on it, and then you render that. They're not as commonly used as they used to be, but it's still a useful thing to know just because you may run across it occasionally, and templating is not super uncommon in our field. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you all in class.